Remember we talked about yesterday, we count what we value.
Yeah, that's right.
That's what's being talked about here. We count what we value. And it's not to shame anyone, it's to say, this is important to us.
That's right.
People are important.
We're taking inventory on our church health.
Yeah, that's right.
That's right.
Spiritual health.
That's right. Wellness.
Spiritual health.
Thank you.
All right. Well,
Thank you. Thank
All
you.
right.
Appreciate it.
Take care.
Well, friends, good to be together again, right?
Yes.
Thank you for your kind hospitality. Yesterday was a great day. And last night, we went to be with some family who just moved a week ago. And we were heartened to hear that yesterday they went to their local Adventist church. Because not always when they've made moves have they done that real quickly. But we wanted to be supportive and just to say this is a transition time, right? What we talked about yesterday, those transition times are sometimes difficult times. We wanted to make sure the transition was going well, so we slipped away overnight and just encouraged each other in the Lord over the evening and early morning, and then it's fun to be back with you. But that's what it takes, doesn't it? We move, we do something, and it makes a difference. We would have done that for some of our friends as well. That's reconnecting ministry. Well, where I want to go today is Adventism, Church of Second Chances. I want to unpack that here and go to how Jesus cared for people who were disconnected and connected them again. So we'll do that, and we're going to open it up for some time of Q&A before we're all said and done. And I've gotten the word, we've got to be in the next room by 11:15, if not before. All right? So help me out. All right? Help me out to make sure that happens. Carnell Taylor was on a road crew repairing a bridge. Taylor was working in the early morning. There was some ice that was on the surface of the bridge. And he was working away. He was fine. But one of the cars that came across that bridge was not fine. It spun out of control, hitting Carnell Taylor. It knocked him over the side of the bridge, plummeting 40 feet into the icy water below. Into the Elizabeth River is where he went. This is the bridge over the Elizabeth River. That's a long drop. He was injured because of the car that hit him. But now the next challenge was he went plummeting into the icy water, and he knew hypothermia would set in, and he would die because he couldn't swim now to get out of that river. So what Taylor didn't realize was that there was a boat crew working the river, cleaning up debris, doing what they could there that day. And somebody said, "Look, man overboard." Over the bridge, not over the side of the boat, but here he is. And he's just plummeted in the water, and they moved quickly toward him. They pulled the life ring that they had on the boat, and they were ready to spin that out to him, and they realized this man wouldn't be able to grab it. And the captain instinctively, Captain Bryson, instinctively knew what he needed to do. He dove into the water, icy as it was, and he swam toward Carnell Taylor. Didn't know the man. But he started shouting to him, "Buddy, I'm coming to help you. I'll be there in just a moment. I'm going to wrap my arms around you." He said, "If you go down, I'll go down. I'm here to get you out." And that's what he did. Between the life ring and the crew pulling them back in, they got Carnell Taylor to safety, and they were able to get over to the side of the river at some point, and emergency vehicles were there. And Carnell Taylor was taken to the hospital, and he lived. My friends, I think that's a metaphor for the church, don't you?
Yeah.
There are people overboard through no fault of their own many times. A spinning car. Life happens. And whether it happens to them and they had nothing to do with it, or they brought it upon themselves, guess what? It is all a result of the world we live in. The sin problem, right? And sometimes we point our finger and say, well, you got yourself into it, you get yourself out of it. What kind of a gracious response is that? We need, I believe, in our churches to have that grace response that says, you're overboard. You're in the freezing water. I'm coming to help you. If you go down, I'm going down too. I'm going to get you out, if at all possible. We sustain each other. We help each other. We care for each other. That's the church. We put together a video, and the line in it was, it's the world that excludes. It's the church that needs to include. And I really believe that. But I'm afraid that's been turned upside down. And we have too many people who say, well, I felt more accepted out there than I really did in my church. Friends, we've got to change that. We've got to change it. It's got to be the safe place. It's Adventism, the church of the second chance. It's like Jesus was asked, right? So Jesus, how many times do I forgive my brother? You remember that? 70 times 7 was the response, which is a Jewish saying to say, you never stop forgiving your brother. Don't stop. That's your brother and your sister, right? It's everybody. Because, as we established yesterday, they don't care how much we know until
they know how much you care.
That's it. Exactly right. And we are on our best behavior when we know we're really loved. Church of the Second Chance. Ponder these points. Not only did we just review the two we talked about yesterday, but I firmly believe that the church is a hospital for sinners and not a country club for saints.
Amen.
Although we've turned it into that. If you pay your tithe and offering, if you, in an obvious way, are keeping all of the standards of the church, you can hide a bunch of things. But if people don't know, you're okay if you're not embarrassing the organization. If you profess all the beliefs of the church, you can stay by. But you start to embarrass the group. It's like a country club. They'll revoke your membership. And we've got to get away from that, friends. It's got to be a hospital for sinners, not a country club for saints. Points to ponder. Well, how we respond is often predicated on our view of God. And there are 4 views of God. Baylor University did a study here just a couple of years ago, asking the general public now, several thousand people, stratified random sample across this United States. Didn't include Canada and the other parts of this division. But they asked the questions that really got at the heart of, what's your view of God? And how you view God and how you feel God views you is really an indication of how you'll treat others. You interested in these 4 views?
Yes.
It follows the ABCs. A, B, C, D. Here it starts. 4 views, the authoritarian God. This is the view that people have. Uh-oh. I thought I had the West. Well, all right, we're going to go for it anyhow, all right? The authoritarian view of God, a God angry at humanity's sins. One who engages in every life and every world event will intervene to correct if needed, when needed. That's their view of God. When they get together, they're people who are religiously and politically conservative and active. This is 31% of Americans overall. Now, it's less than that in the West, as I remember the statistics, because we have more of some of the others. And we'll get to those. But isn't that quite a view of God? Angry at humanity's sins, engaged in every life and event, and will correct and intervene if needed. Now, you get the sense it's not in a loving intervention. It's, zzz, you're wrong, you're out of line, sorry for you. 31% of Americans overall. Benevolent God. Here's the B. Benevolent God, a heavenly parent with standards, but forgiveness and comfort are always available whatever happens. When these people get together religiously, they're people actively showing compassion for the marginalized and those struggling with their own humanity. 23% of Americans overall. Benevolent God. Interesting characterization, isn't it? Heavenly parent. With standards, but forgiveness and comfort are right there, married with it. The third area, I know several of you are still taking notes, so we're all right? Critical God. A judgmental eye. Fascinating term, isn't it? A judgmental eye who's always watching but never will intervene either to punish or to comfort. When these folk get together and associate with each other, they're not willing to draw moral lines on issues. They affiliate little with religious organizations. It really spikes in the Northwest in this critical God area. 16% of Americans overall. My memory is this one approaches 30% in the Northwest. Critical God, judgmental eye, always watching, but won't intervene. Completely different than the authoritarian God. Distant God. A cosmic force that launched the world into space and then let it spin on its own. Oh my. What a view of God. These folk, when they associate with each other, if they do, are afraid that any moral choice they make is always wrong, that this life is all there is no afterlife. So I'm here to get what's due me, and that's what I'm going to do, and I don't care about you because I only have one life to live. 24% of Americans overall. And then there's a certain percentage that are atheists and say, God? What God? Hovers around 4%, as it shows here for the Midwest. Sorry, I didn't have the slide for the Northwest. But I've given you some indication. And this one, the distant God, is higher in the Northwest than other parts of the country. Critical and distant God. Now, this taken into consideration the general public, which includes people who go to church, right? It includes people who go to the Adventist church. And so we're going to have people sitting in the pew who have an authoritarian view of God, a benevolent view of God, a critical view of God, a distant view of God. They may be in the pew, or they may be at home, and they take this view. They grew up Adventist, but they've adopted this point of view. Either they received it from a critical home or academy experience or wherever it might be, or they read themselves into it. Who knows what happens? But it's just to say, these are the different points of view that reside in the minds and hearts of people who come to our churches. So, you'll hear these messages as you visit with the former inactive members, and some of what we need to do is understand that they have a view of grace that we need to share, but sometimes they grew up Adventist and they never got an understanding and an acquaintance with Jesus, a benevolent God, which is what they're looking for, really. What they want is that benevolent God. The majority of people that I have visited with say, I had to get away from the Adventist church just to get to know Jesus. Ooh.
Ouch.
Yeah.
It's like a dagger.
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm.
Can you throw numbers at? Can you throw numbers at that?
At which?
You said a majority of the people you know
Yes, are looking for a benevolent God.
are looking for it.
That's right. Yep.
They don't have it.
They don't have Him. And they want that view of God. And they want that view of God exhibited in the church. Yeah. Thanks for the clarifying question. That's good. They want a heavenly parent with standards, but they want a view of God who brings comfort and forgiveness, always available, whatever happens. See, this fits right into the church of the second chance, right? Showing compassion for the marginalized, those struggling with their own humanity. How many struggle with their own humanity? Right. Yeah, exactly right. We all do, don't we? We all have stuff. We've got to admit it. We heard it in the sermon yesterday, didn't we? All have sinned, fall short of the glory of God. We're fellow travelers on the way. Why not lift each other up? Help each other along the way. That's what people are looking for from their church that they grew up in and now feel a distance from. Well, we can do this. I know this is in your heart. You want to do this. We need to share this around. Because we have a lot of authoritarian God people in our churches. And they believe God intervenes in life and will correct. They're for sure involved in the very same thing. And they'll tell you where you're out of line. It's kind of where we started yesterday, wasn't it? You're in the third grade class and you get told where you're going to go. Yeah. And we would just be sick if we started telling each other stories about critical people who take on folk who are just looking for a benevolent God, struggling with their own humanity. Last week there were several stories, experiences directly I heard. I mean, every week it happens. My heart goes out to these situations, and I try to advocate, and I try to do the things I talk about, because I'm going to be a committee of one, and now I know you're joining me, and I'm delighted about that, and everybody who's participating with us on this is doing that, and saying, I want to do something to care for people. Benevolent God, that's what they're looking for. I went to an event. It was a church planting event. And it was great to be there in that group of people. One of the first things we did was we got waters or juice and we started mingling in a room. And just we're walking around, visiting and enjoying the conversation with each other just to get acquainted. That's how the event started. I was visiting with a group of people over here in the room and having a good conversation with some people when I noticed him across the room. There he was in the crowd. And I knew him. So I thought, oh, I'm going to say hello. So in a few moments after I visited with those folk, I started to make my way over to where I saw that he was. And as I made my way, I didn't just kind of beeline it over there. I said hi to a few people and made my way to where he is. There was there in the crowd. So he'd been an Adventist pastor. Had run into some difficulties. And finally, it was decided that his employment was done. So I knew his story. I got over to that part of the room, and he wasn't anywhere to be found. Then I looked, and I saw, and he was over here. So I made my way over to where he was, and when I got here, he wasn't there. You gather what's happening? And then I noticed he's over here. And so I was much more intentional. And I made my way over through the room, past some people. I thought, I'm going to talk to them later. And when I made my way there, he stayed by. I put up my hand and I said, it's so good to see you. And we got visiting for a few moments, and he said, you know, after I left the pastorate, he said, I got into chaplaincy work, and I work at a hospital now. And he said, I'm a chaplain there, and I'm meeting so many people who once went to an Adventist church. They come through. Either they are there for a hospital stay, or they're there to visit with family members, and we identify with each other. And he said, I've met so many of them, they've said, we really don't find our spiritual home in any of the churches that are in the area. Would you be willing to start one? He said, Paul, he says, I pastored medium and large-sized churches all my career. I'd never planted a church, so that's why I'm here, to find out how you plant a church. So we had a good visit for a while. And then he paused and he looked me straight in the eyes. And he said, I don't know if you could tell, but I was testing you this evening. I said, well, I gathered. I went here, and he said, I know. I was watching you. He says, I've met plenty of people who come from the North American Division or from a union or from a conference who give a good line from up front, but they don't follow it up. He says, I was testing you to see, do you talk about it or do you really live it? Whew. I passed the test. It worked. We reconnected. God has blessed that ministry. Things are going well for him and for his family. I'm pleased about that. But it's the theme of what we've heard this weekend, isn't it? Get up, move, do something. And that's a core building block in reconnecting ministry. If you get a prompt, follow it. Just do something. Of course, you're on your knees. God's prompting you where to go and how to make that happen. You're developing a list. I hope your list is getting longer and longer as the days go by, as you're thinking of names of people. Keep that list handy. By your bedside, where you pray, names will continue to come to you. Write them down. God will figure out the next steps with you. But I was delighted to follow the prompting. And what he wanted to know was, are we still friends? Well, yes, of course. I know your story, and if you gave me time, I'd tell you stories about me, and here I am. We're fellow travelers. Let's help each other along the journey. So you'll find that to be true. I've found very few inactive members who want us to come around and present ourselves as having it all together. If we come along and say, here I am, equal ground at the foot of the cross with you, let's just go together. The journey will be better if we journey this way together. So how did Jesus treat inactives? I want to take you to a story that we know well. Yesterday, I'm sure in your home church there was a little cradle roll class or beginner's class. I'm thinking the older I'm getting, the more exciting that is in those classes. I mean, in the adult classes, we sit around and we talk about concepts, and some of us pray for each other as our heads go down, our eyes are closed. We are praying for each other, right? Our heads are down. Well, maybe we're sleeping, Charlie. Yeah, who knows? And those classes aren't as lively as the little kids. They get to move around, put felts up on the board, and they get to sing songs. Sing songs like Zacchaeus was a wee little man. All right, you want to sing it? A wee little man was he, right? He climbed up in a sycamore tree for the Lord he wanted to see, and as the Savior passed that way, he looked up in the tree and he said, Zacchaeus, you come down, for I'm going to your house today. I'm going to your house today. You realize that's a reconnecting story? I don't think it takes much holy imagination to realize Zach grew up in the synagogue, went to church, right? Went to the synagogue, went to the good Jewish schools, right? Excelled in accounting. And when he was looking for his first job, who was paying well?
The government.
The government. That's right, the tax collectors. Now, this was an occupying government. That was the only wrinkle in the story here. And those being occupied didn't like it. I can well imagine that the synagogue council got together and said, Zacchaeus, do you know, in fact, the other day he collected for me. And he collected far more than he should have. I'm angry at him. And somebody said, well, it happened to me too, and it happened to me too. Because it says Zacchaeus did well at what he did. And I can well imagine that they talked about his name in the synagogue council, don't you? Think that probably happened there? And they probably took a dim view of what he was doing. Maybe they said, look, we're going to censure you. Maybe they disfellowshipped him. We don't have that piece of the story. Although we have some clues, and we'll get to those in just a few minutes, of how they really felt about him. So, Jesus comes into Jericho and sees him. Now, Jesus was surrounded by a crowd that always followed him. He was a popular rabbi making his way through the countryside. Now, if you were a popular person and you had an entourage with you all the time, an adoring crowd that was always delighted to be with you, wouldn't you focus on that group? They're saying, Jesus, we just met so-and-so, and she needs to be healed. Would you heal this person? Sure, Jesus would do that. Jesus, now I like that concept that you gave here yesterday. I've been thinking about it overnight. And would you just give us a little more detail, a little more background and context? And you would respond to those kinds of questions. The healing opportunities. Somebody would say, I'm really hungry. And Jesus would say, what do we have here that we can multiply for the crowds that are around? If I were Jesus, I would focus on that crowd, but not Jesus. Jesus was looking for the invisible church. Jesus was looking up into the trees. And the more you think about that, the more you realize it's just amazing, isn't it? That Jesus' focus was, where are people on the margins? We established this yesterday. That is that 55% in this conference that our conference president just told about, that 55% is still part of the family, still influences your church more than you ever know. And that they're on the margins. That's where Jesus was looking. And he looked up in the tree and says, come on down, Zach. Come on down. The scripture says that Zacchaeus was short. He was small. He couldn't see over the crowd to see what was happening. Kind of reminds me of what happens for a lot of our inactive members. They see the 20%. Now some statistics show that in the church there's only about 12 to 15% that are really active. And the rest of the folk are kind of saying, what's happening there? What's going on in that circle? And they're up on their tippy toes, and they're trying to see in the middle of the circle where most of the activity is happening. I believe when the scripture says he was short in stature, but I have to wonder, did he feel like he really didn't measure up? Psychologically, emotionally, spiritually. And so he felt like he was on the margin. So he got up in a tree because he wanted to see Jesus. That's what our inactive members want to see too. And we don't part the crowd so people can see Jesus. We're in that holy huddle, and we're often excluding those who are on the margins. Now, this is a generalization. I know you don't do that. And having spent our time here together, you're redoubling your energies and efforts and prayer life to include and not exclude. That's what Jesus did. He looked for the invisible church because we're all church. We're all part of the family. The second observation that comes out of this story is this. When Jesus initiates a connection, it's on equal terms. I'm going to your house today. That's what Jesus said. There's a high honor in that day. Today, we would say, let's go out to eat. We don't push our way into somebody's home, somebody's place where they cocoon. We're doing less of the inviting over to our place these days. We'll meet in a neutral setting. But it was a high honor because Zacchaeus had plenty of staff. He had people. And they had food ready at any moment, and the place was always picked up, and everything was in fine shape. And what an honor it was. My guess is Jesus probably had some standing invitations. You come to our house. Anytime you come to Jericho, you come to our house. And so Jesus knew he could go to a variety of places, upstanding folk, well thought of in that community. Zacchaeus, not so much. But he said, your place is just fine with me. We initiate a connection on equal terms. So find a place that's neutral to meet. That's what we do now. But what a high honor it was for Jesus to say, I'm coming to your house today. It's stated in Scripture, I'm coming to your house. My guess is that Jesus, I know, would have said, Zacchaeus, I'd love to come to your home today. Put it on his terms. Let him decide. But the Scripture says it as more of an emphatic statement. I'm coming to your house today. But it communicates that collegiality. Now, Jesus was going there, and you can well imagine people went, he shouldn't go over there. I know Zacchaeus. I know the people that are hanging around there. I know he has a big wine cellar. And I know he drinks from it. He's got a pool table. That's right, exactly. I don't know what he's growing in his garden, but it has some nice leaves on it. We know what goes on there, right? And Zacchaeus' home is not a place where Jesus should be. Am I stretching this too far? And yet today, we criticize people for going to and being church with people where they are and where they're comfortable. You remember this whole series of episodes here a number of years ago called Cheers? You remember that? Have you ever listened to that theme song and that? That you go where everybody knows your name, right? And that you always know, how'd the rest of that line go? Something about you're always welcome here just the same. If you ever can listen to that, I've had so many inactive people say to me, you know, if that were the theme song for church, I'd be there. And they said, I went to the Cheers bar because I really felt like I could open up and say, here I am. And people would say, and here I am, and here we are together.
They let it all hang out.
They did. They really did. Yeah. Now, you can take that metaphor too far. You understand. But what if we brought here some of those strong values of caring for people, and we realized that when we went to be with them, we would really ignore the grumbling crowd. We'd ignore the grumbling crowd. It reminds me of the picture that now is coming up on the screen here. A man said to his friend, I'd love for you to come to church. I know you used to go. He says, yeah, I did. He said, I'd love for you to come to church with me someday. Or some activity that we're doing, maybe even away from church, whatever would work for you. And the guy said, you know, I grew up in the church, but I picked up a habit. And he says, I can't come back to church. He said, everyone would smell my sin. And I praise God for his friend who said these words. He said, you know, I wish every sin had a scent. Because when we came to church, you'd smell that foul smell and you'd realize, there we are together. There we are together. Because every sin has a scent. Just wish it were a little stronger. And we would realize we need the sweet smell of Jesus in every life. Well, there is the grumbling crowd. But Jesus did not listen to that grumbling crowd. In Luke 19, in the Zacchaeus story, he just ignores the grumbling crowd when they say, he's gone to be at the home of a sinner. And I shake my head every time I hear that. He's gone to be in the home of a sinner. Who in the world did they think they were? Right?
It needed an adjective, an open sinner.
Yeah. You're right, Terry. You're right. Yeah. They were hiding it. And everybody's going, oh, aren't they good? Just didn't know what they were dealing with. But Jesus didn't listen to the grumbling crowd. And you count on the fact, my friends, that when you get involved in a reconnecting ministry, there will be people who criticize. Count on it. I would encourage you to follow the example of Jesus. Just let them keep talking. Keep moving forward. Keep focused. You're going to find someone who says, I want to meet you at a certain restaurant. And you're going to walk in, and people are going to say, why are you here? Yeah, because you're here to connect with someone. Or you're going to meet here or there. They're going to say, let's do a concert together, and you're there, and you see some other people. And they're going to start criticizing what happens and where you're meeting people. Because you're meeting them on equal ground, foot of the cross. And they're going to start to criticize. And we often freeze up and we draw back and we go, oh, well, I'm not going to do that because I don't want to offend them. Let me encourage you, go ahead and offend them.
That's exactly
We're
what
all
he said.
sinners here.
Go ahead and offend them because they'll never be satisfied. They have an insatiable appetite to be perfect. They need the gospel message, and until they come to the place where they realize that, maybe you'll have the opportunity to present it to them. Maybe it will be someone else. But go ahead. Let the grumbling crowd be the grumbling crowd. Exactly. And we give them way too much credibility. Because they present themselves as being holier than, keeping the rules better than anybody else. It is a Pharisaical perspective. And the years that I've been involved in this ministry, I've come to the place where I'm just not going to let them call the shots. Let them complain. Jesus said, I am going to let them grumble and criticize. I am still going to Zacchaeus' home. The fourth observation that comes out of this is watch what happens when Jesus touches lives. I've got a pretty good idea that when Jesus went into Zacchaeus' home and they ate together, I'm pretty sure that Jesus didn't say, now Zach, look buddy, in a few minutes what I want you to do is go out on your porch and here's your talking points. I want you to confess, and I want you to make an offer that's pretty generous here, Zach. You know, just a timid offer won't do. You've got, and you know you've been wrong, so you need to make restitution. I don't think Jesus said any of that. Do you? I can't imagine it. Jesus was a non-anxious presence with him. Said, Zach, tell me about your life. What's going on? Oh, people are critical? Really? How's it been going? What's been your journey? Those two critical questions. What was it like growing up? And then what was it like as you started to move away? And what can we do to introduce you to benevolent God? And so they spent some time there. And my guess is Zacchaeus said to Jesus, look, Jesus, I want to make things right. When we are in the presence of Jesus, we want to change. Because we know we're really loved and we get on our best behavior. Right? I think Zacchaeus voluntarily did that. Walked out on his porch, said, I know you're here to see Jesus, but I just want to mention to you, my life has been touched by Jesus. And here's the result, my friends. There's nothing like a changed life. There's nothing like a reconnecting story that gets told. As you get acquainted with people and you hear their story, I would encourage them to say, and come tell that story to our group. I mean, it just electrifies a room. My wife was reminding me of this as we traveled yesterday. She said, you remember when we went here and here and here? She said, it's great to have those stories told. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see. When people tell those stories, and as you get acquainted with them, they'll be fearful to tell the story. And you say, don't get in a lot of detail about where you were and what you did. Just say, hey, you folks know. I went down that road. But let me tell you how it got turned around. And I'm not where I want to be, you'll hear them say. I'm on a journey, and we can all affirm, and so are we, right? But there's something about that transformed life that we need to hear in our churches. It will bring it alive. I would encourage you, get people up front, tell their story. Don't embarrass them unduly. If it needs to be a small group, do that. If it needs to be a Bible study in someone's home, do that. If it's a Sabbath school time or a church time or a potluck or whenever it is, get telling these stories. Get telling the stories when somebody says, you folks were so good to me a few years ago, I got back into the church and then I fell off the wagon again, you know. And I really went over fool's hill and you have welcomed me again. And then again. And again. And then let's applaud and be joyful and celebrate the victories. That's what Jesus did. Watch what happens when Jesus touches lives. People change. And we are changed in the process. Why do I think it's a reconnecting story? Verses 9 and 10 say it this way. Jesus said to him, Zacchaeus, salvation has come to this house today because this man too, he says to the crowd, is a son of Abraham. Some versions say, son of Abraham again. I can well imagine in the synagogue, this is why that holy imagination really, I think, can be substantiated in these verses. My guess is the synagogue said, we're going to give him the Jewish response. We shun him and we tell him, you are dead to us. Have you seen this? I mean, movies have portrayed it through the years. The Jazz Singer was one of those. You know, the young man was a cantor in the synagogue and did all the church music, but wanted to also sing in the public venues. And he moved away from that. And his father comes to the home, tears his garments, and says, "You're dead to me." My guess is Zacchaeus experienced something like that, if not that exactly. So this is high praise when Jesus says, "You're a son of Abraham again." He's back in the family. He has his place, his rightful place. He's back there, right at home, always where he should be. For the Son of Man has come to seek and save those that are lost. It was back then. It's now. It will be forever. That God is one who says, love wins. Love wins. You are never so far away that you can't come home. And our members are looking for that kind of place that welcomes them home. Shows them a benevolent God. Is one who says, I want for you to know you have a second chance here. And just like Peter was told, when he responded 70 times 7, it's you never stop forgiving those for whom Christ came and died. That's all of us. I don't know if anybody here has run a triathlon. You're acquainted with how it works? It starts with a swim, 2.4 miles. You get in the water and it's pretty cold, but I've watched this happen, you know, and all those colored skull caps are on and they dive into the water. And I mean, there's this frenzy of water there and you think, somebody's going to drown here. And they're swimming and they make their way, and of course some pull right ahead pretty quickly, and the group starts to separate between those who's done a lot and those that haven't as much. They swim 2.4 miles, and when they're done with that, they run and they take off some of what they've had on to keep themselves warm, and they put on other things as they move along, and they're on their way, and they get on their bike and they ride the bike for 112 miles. Now, I'm tired just telling you this. And when they're done with that, then they run 26 miles, 385 yards. People love to do this. I went to a place where there were thousands of people. It was in California. Our friend's son was running and biking and swimming in this. He was doing the triathlon, had trained for it. We watched every stage. We kind of ran from station to station, from place to place. We took some pictures. We cheered him on. We were so excited with what he was doing. And it was great to be there that day. And we enjoyed the experience. And we were getting weary just being there, participating and watching. Finally, it came to the time that he finished, came across the finish line. In his age group, he came in third. It was tremendous. He did a wonderful job, and we applauded him and cheered him on. He was quite sweaty, so we just kind of patted him on the back. We weren't going to give him a hug like we usually do, but he was pretty excited with how it turned out. And Terry and I were then leaving, and she and I were heading back to our car, and we were going to drive some distance then to be with some friends at that point. And we thought we had experienced the best thing we had ever seen that day. But we hadn't seen anything yet. What we witnessed as we were going back toward our car, walking back toward our car, were people still running. They had just started to run. Others had been finishing. But they had done the swimming, then the biking, and now they were starting to run, or they had just gotten maybe halfway through the marathon. There they were. And you could just tell the look on their face like, why did I do this? Why am I here? I'm dead tired, and I don't think I'm going to make it. And they're running along. And then what we noticed were early finishers of the race were there along the trail saying, come on, you can do it. Here's some fruit. Here's some water. What do you need? It's right around the corner. You're going to make it. It's only 2 or 3 little hills, and you'll be all right. It's just downhill from here, somebody else would say. It's just flat from here. And they'd encourage people along the way. We teared up. Because we both looked at each other and we said, that's church. Early finishers need to come back along the trail, and they need to say, you can make it. It's just around the corner. Just a little bit of a hill. You're going to do it. You're going to be all right. You're going to make it. That's what we need. We need to offer each other second chances and third chances. We need to encourage each other along the way. We've gotten to the place where we've become critical and we say, you know, your running form isn't very good. You know, your cycling form, you need a better bike. People have been telling you need a better bike, right? Or you need a better wetsuit. It's kind of your fault that you got hypothermia, there, and on it goes. And why in the world do we do that?
You know what the biggie is?
What?
You need more practice.
You need more practice. Yeah, that's right, Terry. Yeah. Friends, we've just got to stop doing that. And we've got to advocate. We've got to say in the church, we've just got to tell stories like this and say, now this is church. And then remember, as we talked about yesterday afternoon, we also need to say, and here's why we don't want to stay in the place where we're evaluating people's bikes or running form or swimming style. Because where does that lead? Where does that lead? It leads to criticism. And criticism is a cancer. And it is eating us up. And we're bleeding people. Can we be the church of the second chances? Yes, we can. We can do it. Now, I'm preaching to the choir. I understand that. Right? You're already doing. But I just want to spur you on to good works, as the scripture says. Please go home. Please, when you visit other places, just speak up and say, folks, I think we need to change our approach. We've got a lot of people we want to care for. And if we're experiencing friendly fire and we're shooting at each other internally, it is distracting us from getting about what we need to be about and creating that kind of loving, caring, forgiving environment. The church can be it. We can have a benevolent view of God. We can have a safe place. We can have a city of refuge. It's within our reach. Are you ready to take it? And move it forward. Just take a few just to kind of highlight a few items on greeting, if you think that would be helpful.
Yes.
As it relates to reconnecting ministry. I think the terms we use are important. Black sheep doesn't work. Okay? Backslider doesn't work. What other terms have you heard? Yeah, he's right. Yeah. Or ex-Adventist. Now, if you don't have membership anymore, then technically it's probably you are an ex-Adventist. But remember, the majority of people still have membership. So call them an X, you're really labeling them as, yeah, you're gone.
Well, I know people who haven't been in the church in 25 years, and you ask them what they are, they'll tell you they're an Adventist.
Exactly right.
You're X'd
Yeah.
off the map.
Yeah.
That's what it's up.
I've had people tell me, I got the letter from the church that they've taken an action and I'm no longer a member. Here's what they tell me. It's the worst day of my life. They say, I'll grant to you I haven't been there in years. They have every right to do it. But I'm just going to tell you it's the worst day of my life.
It's like God rejected them.
It's like what?
God rejected them.
Yeah.
Synagogue.
Yeah.
Jewish time.
Exactly right. Precisely. Yeah.
There's a difference, though. You get thrown out of synagogue, they do not want you to come back.
Right.
If you get thrown out of Adventist church, they actually do want you to come back.
In many places.
But sometimes they don't.
Yeah. But they're...
They want you to go back to stage one, reconnect.
To a person who receives that letter, they don't feel like you want them to come back.
Yeah.
I know people
They
who
feel
are
like they
dysfunctional
don't see you.
and expect
Yeah.
the letter,
Yeah.
and they don't get it.
Yeah. Well, there's that too.
They don't get the letter.
You're right. Yeah, there are some of those cases. You're right. But if somebody has a tender heart, and for a variety of reasons they've just kind of gotten bounced off the bridge, yeah, they'd wish for somebody to give them a different message. So the terms we use when we do greeting. Guest always works. You're an honored guest. I'm anticipating you're going to be here again, and I hope your experience is good now so that you say, I want to come back. Sometimes visitor goes both ways. Sometimes visitor is, you're here to visit, I know you're not going to be back. And we kind of treat them that way. Or friend. I mean, if you get to building any kind of rapport, why couldn't you call somebody a friend? Well, the terms we use are important. Think about those. The churches doing effective greeting are thinking about two layers of greeters. There's the person who's here with the bulletin. May I use this for a second? At the door, right? You're coming in, trying to keep the cold weather out. You're trying to keep the hot weather out, whatever the time of year. And you're giving them bulletins. That's one layer of greeter. But there's a whole other layer of greeter. What if you had somebody stepping back a few paces, noticing that when you came through the door, and now the greeter at the door is handing bulletins to somebody else, you stand there and you wonder, where do I go now? Or, yeah, exactly. Or you can hand them a gift. Here's something that our pastor has written, or a DVD you can listen to as you, or CD, and you can listen to in your car as you leave. Or is there anywhere that you want to be here at the church? You know about a room, a children's room, an adult class room. You can help somebody there. That's the second layer of greeter. These folk are helping to kind of pay attention to what happens after you get through the door. The church is doing effective greeting. We're noticing our greeting not only before church starts, but during and after the services. Think about it. You're coming in the door. You want to have a good greeting. Of course, first impressions are important. But people don't always come on time. The majority of our inactive members come late on purpose. Because they're afraid what they're going to experience, and they figure, well, everybody's going to be out of the lobby. They're going to be in the church. They're going to be looking forward. If I can slip in a back row, they'll not notice me. I won't forget meeting her. She was 83 years old when I met her. She said, when I grew up in the Adventist church. She said, then I had some troubled times. But she said, I felt duty-bound to go to church and give my tithe and offering. But she said, I'd go to church and I'd get all dressed up. Sonny, she said to me. Sonny. She called me Sonny. She said, I'd get all dressed up, and I could only well imagine. right? Maybe some of this going on, the skirmish. I don't know what she did all. She didn't tell me. But she was wanting to get people's attention. Not in the way that we'd wish to get attention, but she was doing it, right? Let it be what it is. She was wanting to get attention, but she would sit near the back. And she said, what I'd do is wait. When the offering plate came by, I'd put in my tithe envelope, and then I'd stand up and I would leave. I did this a number of weeks. She says, I won't forget the Sabbath that I got up, I walked out into the lobby of the church, and there was one of the greeters. And she said, he looked at me and smiled and said, it's always so good to have you here. We'll look forward to the next time. I love that response. Now let's unpack, why in the world was he there in the middle of the service? Maybe he did. Exactly right. And he was wanting to respond to whatever she wanted to give. Now, I've met some greeters and ushers and different ones who say, you're late. Or, why are you leaving now? We've just begun. And trying to shame people into kind of conforming. Why do we do that? She said, his response that day started to turn my heart toward coming back and staying for the whole worship experience. Now, that greeter was missing his blessing, wasn't he? I mean, he's out in the lobby. Maybe there's a speaker out there that pipes in what's taking place in the sanctuary, but maybe not. Maybe he really couldn't hear. He surely couldn't see. He wasn't getting the full experience of what was happening there. But he was there to serve those who came late or left early. I think we need more greeters doing that. I've also heard from plenty of inactive members who say, if I have a good experience Sabbath morning, I'm scared as all get out going in, and I don't want to talk to anybody, admit anything. But if I have a good experience, I'll talk to you as I'm leaving, much more readily than when I arrived. So why don't we position those same greeters who were there when you came to step out just a bit early and be at the door and just say, hey, have a good week. Hope everything's going well. If there's anything we can do for you, let us know, And here's something we want you to have as you're on your way. Whatever you want to do. But you're creating that connection as they leave. Exactly right. And that's what the greeters doing effective reconnecting ministry and greeting ministry are doing. They're greeting before, during, and after the activity of the morning. Yeah. Yeah.
Fortunately, we did fairly well, except I think they weren't invited downstairs or something. We always felt that they had pretty positive, but some of them were kind of scary. Because one lady went all dolled up like what you said, and I guess you overheard someone in the bathroom talking about her. But they did that because this conference is trying to.
Good. Oh, it helps to have someone hold up a mirror. That's what that is, right? Hold up the mirror and say, do you see what I see? That's just not a Christmas song, right? Do you see what I see? Do you hear what I hear?
Gail,
Yes.
she does her thing, her husband comes in without her.
Aha.
So, because people know who she is.
Yes.
And she expects a certain treatment. But then, she knows what she's going to get. But then he comes in and nobody knows him.
Mm-hmm.
And she tests to see how people are going to.
Yeah. We need that as humans. That's called accountability. Yeah. Remember names. I think I alluded to this yesterday, right? So use whatever memory device you can to remember names, because you know how you feel when your name is spoken. Why not hand that compliment along to other people? So there are memory devices that help remember names. If there's a pictorial directory, just go through and just figure that out. Learn from others. But then use the team approach. And find ways. Now, what happens in some churches is, and maybe I have that point here, but the churches, before I go to this point here, every once in a while, everybody will wear a name tag. It helps, even with people who are actively involved in the church, but you can't remember his or her name. And so you say, "Hi, how are you? How are you doing? How's your week been?" Because I can't remember your name. It just helps everybody. Every once in a while, everybody wears a name tag. I firmly believe that greeters ought to wear a name tag every week. Because here's what happens. You walk in the door and you say, "We're glad you're here. If I can do anything for you, let me know." If you remember my name, you'll come back to me. If not, you're embarrassed because I should remember that person's name. And so I'm not going to ask because I don't remember the name. So, greeters every week, every once in a while, everybody, just wear a name tag. Just kind of helps put everybody on equal ground. And then nobody's standing out as, "I'm the guest. I'm the odd one." Right?
Would it help to have the reader's names that week in the bulletin?
Well, that's a nice first step, but if there's a list of 5 names, how do I know which female name is yours? Yeah. Maybe both would help. Sure. Recently, I went into a Walmart. I travel, as you might well imagine, and so I'm in a different place often. And I got to a location, and I didn't have one thing I needed. My host said, I'll drop you off right through the door. I'll be here in the parking lot, and you can find what you need before we head to the retreat center." I walked in. Now, many Walmarts are laid out very similarly, so you kind of know your way. But some are different enough that you say, let's see exactly where is it. That something I need, I'm not sure where it might be. I saw one of the associates, and I said, "By the way, I'm looking for." And she said, "Come with me." You know how this works? And so we walked down several aisles, and then she said, "Here you go. Now, what you're looking for, there's 1, 2, 3 options here. Different price points. We'll let you decide, but there's where you need, what you need." And took me there and then said, "Any other questions?" Friends, if they can do that in retail, surely we can do it in the church. Yeah, we could do that in the church. It's just good service, good servant service. That's what we are. Recently, I went into a church and I said, "I'm here. I'm supposed to be speaking in XYZ room." The greeter said, "Oh, it's easy to find." That should have been my first clue. It wasn't easy to find. Here's how she described how to find the room. You go down the hallway. There's 3 doors. It's none of those rooms. You make a left, she said. You walk down that hallway. There are 4 doors. She said, "Now that 3rd door is our baptistry." She said, "Don't go in there. We don't have a railing. We've just put water in. We're going to have a baptism today." She said, "If you open that door, you go right in the water." At that point, she said, you go down a long flight of stairs. You double back to the right, and when you do, you are just 2 doors away from your room. Could you have found that room? No.
Confusing. I would say, help me.
Yeah.
This person confused me.
Now, there are a variety of ways that we can respond. If we don't have someone who can take me to where that room is, surely they could have had some kind of outline, architectural drawing of the church, some map, and just with a highlighter quickly you go here, 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 here. It's yours. or any other options you might want to consider that helps make it easy for people to get where they need to go. Remember, you know where to go. You can see it in your mind. You've been there before. You know it like the back of your hand. But someone who's new needs to be taken. Now, one of the benefits of that is that you're able then along the way to say, now, here's the waters. Here are our restrooms. Here's where the fellowship hall is, and we're going to have a lunch here. It's come right after church. And here and here and here. And may I introduce you when we get to the room? Now, sometimes they'll say, no, I just want to slip in. Honor that. But they say, well, sure. And when you get the room, they can say to the leader or whoever's right there at the door, this is Paul Richardson. He's come from out of town. He's here for, oh, okay. And you get welcomed into the new venue. Why not do that? Take people where they need to go. If we can do it, it can happen in retail, it can happen in the church. We are noticing that the greeters are being told things that for them, this is information that no one else has heard. Jill walks in and says to the greeter, when the greeter says, how's your week been? She's willing to volunteer information. She says, I lost my job this week. A few minutes later, Jim walks in, and after visiting with Jim for a few minutes, it's found out that Jim's dog died this week. Now, if you're anything like me, you say, well, yeah, sure, I'll remember that. But after you've greeted 20, 30, 40 people, 100 people, you get to the place where you say, Jim lost his job this week and Jill's dog died. Right? And so you send a sympathy card that Jill's dog died, and she goes, my dog's right here. Right? Greeters that do well, after they have a moment, will pull out whatever device they might have, brother, right? And note it down. Or if they take a piece of paper, they write it down, just so they can remember. Then what we're seeing is there is a way to follow up on ministry needs that surface. As greeters only are told this, and really nobody else, Sabbath morning. What if Jill had a few women show up at her place Sunday morning? Because she's mentioned to a greeter, I lost my job on Sabbath. And a few women come with groceries in hand and say, we think this might be helpful. And are you able to pay your electric bill this week, this month? Can you imagine how Jill would respond? Inactive member or not. But the word would get around, look how they love each other. And it's because the greeter paid attention, and there was a way to follow up, and a response happened right away. People moved, they acted. It's a theme. Well, look people in the eyes. Look people in the eyes. Yeah, thank you. I'll quickly get through these because time is running short. Sorry, I've taken too long here. Look people in the eyes when you greet them. It's the window of the soul. It's important to look them in the eyes. There's so many of our inactive members who say, I came back to church, and the first thing they did was look me up and down. And what it communicates to the inactive member is, uh-oh, something's wrong. I'm not dressed appropriately. They can smell, I'm a smoker, or I'm this or that, or I'm out of line. Now, you may not be thinking that. That may be the farthest thing from the truth for you, but that's what they perceive. And perception is king, right? So don't look them up and down. Just look in the eyes. Say, we're delighted to have you here today. And leave it at that. See where the person wants to take it from there. And men, may I suggest, look women in the eyes. If you look other places, it makes them nervous. Our greeters are doing way too much of that. Look people in the eyes. Well, offer your name first. And don't interrogate. I think that that's real helpful. We're delighted you're here today. My name is Paul. If there's anything I can do, please let me know. And my name tag says it. I've offered it verbally. I'm here to help whenever you need it. Just offer your name. Let it be that. There are some people that get into this interrogation game and they think they're building rapport. Hi, what's your name? What brought you here today? How long are you going to stay? Who are you staying with? Exactly. And on it goes. And pretty soon people say, do I need to have my attorney present? And we think it's building rapport. It's interrogation. That's how it's perceived on the other side. So, well, yeah, although you really want them to offer it. Because some people want to just kind of be anonymous. Yeah. Remember, a good greeting is the appropriate greeting that the person wants to receive, not the one you want to give. So for some people, it's hand me the bulletin and don't touch me in the process. Right? And the other person is all the way over on this side. If you don't give me a big bear hug, I've not been appropriately greeted. And then it goes all the way in between. Some people want a handshake that's real firm. Others just a bit of a handshake. Other people, a fist bump, right? Some cultures, a fist bump, and before you're done. That's an appropriate greeting for them. Other people, you're able to touch an arm, maybe, or touch a shoulder. You might get away with that. You might give a hug around the shoulders, but don't give a full-on hug. Remember, it's got to be the appropriate greeting they want to receive.
So if they are new, you've never seen them before, how do you know which greeting to give?
You don't know, so start with the least. And then maybe move from there. Now, there's some people that read people pretty quickly, and you can learn from them. That's where the greeting training helps. But you'll be able to tell. You're going to see that somebody, they'll put out their hand and they really have a firm handshake. You just respond in kind. Don't start with a hug. Don't start with more than just really some of the most appropriate things.
I often ask them, are you a person that likes to hug?
Sure, you could ask. Yeah. But then don't kind of pout when they go, no. Yeah. I'm not saying you do that. I'm not saying you do that. You just let it be. Yeah. We've talked about name tags. Okay? Watch for the nonverbal as well as the verbal cues that people give. Remember, 7% and 93%? There's a lot of nonverbal people give. I watched as one guy said, so, how's your week been? Fine, he said. The next person came in, he said, how's your week been? And the guy was honest, and he said, I lost my job. And the greeter said, oh, that's good, that's good, that's good.
That's not good.
And just welcomed him on in, because he wasn't listening and he didn't see all the nonverbal, and and the kind of went, I lost my job this week. Well, read that. Even if he says fine, you can kind of say, was it really fine? And find out what the real story is. Now, don't pry, of course. But if you can, find out more of what is going on. And greeters, please, 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 please don't hang around with each other in the holy huddle with all the bulletins in your hands and people walking by. Exactly right. Oh, I've been in many churches. Recently, I went into a church, holy huddle over here. I've walked into the door. Nobody's there. There they are talking to each other. They're happy to see each other, and I was delighted. But they were holding all the bulletins. I'm irreverent enough that I said, can I have one of those? Here, the woman said.
Oh, no.
And they all kept talking to each other.
Wow.
Greeters, you're there to talk to each other.
Sheet of paper and mark it.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, yeah, I did. I gave the report, too. But it's important, isn't it? Greeters talk to each other on Tuesday. Talk to each other Sabbath afternoon. Sabbath morning, you are there for everybody else. And even better, everybody in the church. I'm here to serve you. That's what I want to be about. I don't know if this greeting information is helpful at all. But it's part and parcel of reconnecting ministry. It's just tied together. So what are you going to do going forward? What questions do you have? I sensed you had a question earlier. No. Yeah. Not really? No.
Well, I was just wondering, I know of one situation where a certain person became friends with us,
Yeah.
and they were not an honest person, but we didn't know that because they portrayed themselves as being this incredible, money-giving,
Yes.
very wealthy person.
Yeah.
They hurt a lot of people before everybody figured out what they really were.
Right.
And yet we kept trying to reach out and
Yeah.
draw them back to God
Uh-huh.
without being critical,
Yeah.
but it just didn't work. And now they're out of the church. Their name was dropped because they hurt so many people and they
Yep.
were not safe.
Right.
Do you have to just let those people go, or do you
Yes.
still keep trying to work with them? When you
No,
know they're not changing?
I think that you need to draw boundaries. I had somebody say, am I supposed to let the person going to be inappropriate and interrupt meetings and do all that? And I said, no, don't do that. Because there are things that we need to do to have a good meeting happen and for people to be trustworthy and all those sorts of things. And if you approach that person and say, do you realize how you're coming across here? And they go, yeah, well, it doesn't matter. Well, no, it does matter. You need to draw boundaries. That's appropriate. And it goes back to what we talked about, I think, the first session, which is don't focus on some of those folk. Go for the low-hanging fruit first. For the people who you say, if I made an invitation to you, go, you want me around again? Sure, I'll do that. I'll go be with you and what happens, or I'll come to something that takes place. They just want to know they're included. Concentrate on those folks first. No, it sounds like you had an appropriate response. Yeah.
We have a gentleman that visits once in a while that he likes to do a little bit more than hugging.
Yep.
He reaches.
Yep. Yep.
And so they're going to, I think, have to set some boundaries for that person.
Yeah.
I mean, they did in the past.
Yeah.
He wasn't able to come for 3 months or something like that. But
Mm-hmm.
now it's started to come again. So
Mm-hmm.
now they're going to have to relook at that again.
Yeah. Good.
Yeah, and
You know, what helps some people is to just show them what you want and what you don't want. So you might, one-on-one, not embarrass a person, but just say, let us role play here what's appropriate for you to do and what's inappropriate for you to do. And get a couple people who are willing to role play this and get them to do that. Because some people are real visual. You can tell them until the cows come home and they just won't get it. So then get some folk to role play it. That might help. Drawing boundaries is appropriate, friends. Sometimes we err on the opposite side, of not drawing some appropriate boundaries, and then we let dysfunction happen. And we ought not to do that either. Because there are some people leaving because we allow that dysfunction to continue. So that's part of our reconnecting ministry. Okay, what else?
There's, I think, probably a lot of churches, ours included, but there was a, what do you call it, election? What do you call it? Well, anyhow.
Yes.
He was inappropriate with children.
Yes.
Okay, I don't know what you call it. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so
Yeah.
this happened many years ago.
Yep.
Many years ago.
Yep.
He was going to the church when we came at first and would always sit with his parents and so on. His father passed away, but anyhow, But, you know, that's a real sensitive issue, and I guess because of what do you call it? Liability, yeah. That's the reason, but
Yep.
I think so this particular person,
Yep.
particularly Vic, has still reached out to, he'll come to our house and,
Okay.
and try to, you know, and his mother still comes, but anyway, that's an issue that I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Can I address that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, please.
Actually, the conference doesn't have any stuff like that. What they provide is there is a form of some suggestions, and that should be presented to the church board so that they can approve it. At our church, what we did, because these molester people, they don't have to tell you that they have this issue going on. You know, they have to tell law enforcement, but they don't have to tell you. But a lot of them do come up and go, hey, look, I've had this issue. I just want you to know. And so what we do is I take them to the side and just say, hey, here we have these rules because we want to protect you and also our children because we don't want you falsely accused. So if you need to go to the restroom, just grab this guy over here or this other, one of the deacons and have him go there with you, you know. And you can't be in charge of any children's programs. You really can't be involved in those. And if you're okay with those conditions, you're welcome to come here.
Yep.
You know.
Yep.
But I do know of churches in the conference that say, hey, if you have that issue, we don't want you coming through our door.
It really depends on the level of their offense, though, because I'm involved in some of that.
Yep.
And some of those people cannot be in a situation where there's being children present. They're just not safe.
That's right. That's right.
In our conference, and I think you guys have had it too here, the training, because we're involved with Pathfinder, so we
Right.
have to be very sensitive to
Right.
that.
Right.
And so not Corling, I can't think of the name. I just know Oregon Conference and the Columbia is very involved with.
Yes.
I think you probably have heard.
Wayne Hicks is in charge of it for Upper Columbia,
Right.
and I forget who is.
For behavioral intervention.
Yeah.
Is who we hire.
Yeah.
So that would be good if you guys ever have in this conference.
right.
Any training.
That's right.
Because it is a huge, huge issue.
It is.
It's not a matter of just, well,
Yep.
just if you come, you know, and you just are chaperoned. There are some people that can deal with that, and there's some offenders that's just not enough.
That's right. We need to protect our young. We've got to do that. Yeah. We've got to do that. A. B, we need to protect those who are the lambs among us, and they might be adults, right? So we've got to do that as a church. We've got to do that. I'm glad that we're not in the news like the Catholics are. I pray to God that we don't get to that place. But there's plenty of reasons why we could. And we've got to change that. We're losing people who leave because we're not addressing that too. So we've got to protect our young. We've got to do that. And I appreciate what happens, and thanks for the response of what takes place here. There is that policy in place. And it goes both ways. There are some people that get falsely accused too. Or if they've had a past, but they really are on a new path, but people won't let them start a new day. But it takes some shadowing. You know, somebody ought to follow with them to protect them as well as protect the young. Yes.
Personally, I believe that those people need my love, my attention.
Yes. Yes.
That they need to be treated in a humane way.
Yes.
There's some things we can't accommodate at church. But personally, we need to love them.
Yes. Exactly.
And you're providing a safe environment for them to receive that love.
That's right.
You're doing that.
Don't single them out.
Yeah. Keep that friendship. Keep that connection. Yep. I agree with the affirmation.
Jobs
Yeah,
that don't involve children.
that's right.
Be involved. in
Yep,
church.
yep.
Specific.
Sure. They might be real gifted at working with paperwork and other things that they can get involved in.
I would like to
That's right.
mention too that like Pathfinder leaders and stuff, we do extensive background checks.
Right, I understand that.
Yep, yep. It's 11 o'clock, friends. They asked us to be punctual. It has been an honor to share these 2 days together. Thank you. God go with you. I'm going to pray for you that great things happen. And please, you have my contact information. Let me know what you're doing. We're in this together, right? It's not my ministry. Some people say, we like your ministry. And I say, I think we're all in this together, right? Yeah. So now you're part of the team. Welcome to the team. Let me know what you're doing. Want to hear it?
One question I had on the
Yes.
visitors, you know how they
Yes.
used to have guest books?
Right?
But we were told not to use the guest books anymore, but just to have these little cards. And if they want to take the time to fill it out, that they
Yep.
can, and then we
Yep.
give those to the pastor. And I just wondered what other churches might be doing with that.
More are going to leaving it to what you want to give us of information. When I grew up, you walked in the door and you had to sign the book. And you had to give your name and address and phone number. Now that's private information. And you don't have to give it. But we're finding that people want to give information if you say to them, if you want our newsletter, just let us know how you want to receive it. If you want to know about upcoming events, put it on terms that benefit them. That makes it even better.